You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Cool. All right.
What's this for?
So this is for, I have a hobby known as street epistemology.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the topic of epistemology before?
No.
It deals with knowledge,
Okay.
what you know and how you know it.
Okay.
Like what method did you use to get from point A to your
Okay.
conclusion?
All right.
And how can we be certain that this method that we're using, whatever it is accurate, is reliable?
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be, you pick the topic. I've talked to people about belief in God, some religious claim of some kind, a political claim, paranormal, supernatural, none of the above, something that you are fairly certain of and that is foundational to you, something where you're willing to say, I know this to be the case.
Something that I'm certain of. It's tough. It could be anything.
It could be anything, right?
Let's talk about religious beliefs.
Okay. Can I get your name, by the way?
Yeah, James.
James. Nice to meet you, man. Raul. So James, religious beliefs.
Mhm.
Do you want to get specific?
Right. Yeah. So I'm Catholic. I actually done a lot of. I took a whole philosophy class on like if the existence of God. So there's like a couple. There's like a couple like positions that I'm kind of like. That kind of prove it, but there's also a couple positions that don't really prove it. But
Okay. So philosophy.
Mhm. So I took contemporary moral issues where we talked about that a lot, and then we also talked about. I took a philosophy class on the existence of God, which I thought was very interesting.
Interesting.
hmm
What kind of stuff, was there anything that sort of informed your beliefs currently and helped establish where you're at now concerning the existence of God?
Right. So I guess I always grew up thinking that I was raised Catholic, so I always believed that God did exist, and then those beliefs did get challenged as I got older. But there's like a couple. There's like a couple arguments. One being like, one of the arguments that my philosophy teacher said a lot was everything like this world is like it's not like completely perfect, but it's just so complex and like how far we've came from everything, and we like a good argument is like how could anything be this complex without like some divine being behind it. And there is evolution, but like to some point like you gotta like if it is evolution, I would think it's very very I would think it's very impressive how far we came. So I feel like it's almost not impressive enough. I feel like there's some sort of divine intervention at
Okay.
least.
So to repeat that back to you, we live in a complex world that seems to necessitate God.
Right.
Okay.
Like just there's no way that like the world can be
Okay.
this complex, this good, at least in some areas,
Okay.
without some sort of divine intervention.
So this is one of sort of the pillars that uphold your belief in the existence of God.
It's one of them. Obviously, it's a tricky subject. There's not a ton of proof, so like you have to kind of find any pillar you can to really back your beliefs.
Okay,
on it.
so I like to focus on one of these
Okay.
sort of pillars, whatever is upholding this belief,
All right.
and I understand it could be several,
Mhm.
Do you want to keep going with different reasons and we can park at one? Do you want to stick here or you want to keep naming some more?
I have other reasons. They're not really like foundational beliefs. There's one, I forgot what it was called. It was like, it was kind of like it's not statistics, but it's kind of like it's in your best interest to believe in God than to not, because we also learned about this in philosophy, but it's not really like a belief thing. It's kind of just like, so what it is like if you do believe in God and He exists, you would get heaven and that shit. If you believe in if you don't believe in Him and He does exist, then I guess you go to hell. So that's not like, but if you don't believe in Him and He doesn't exist, then you didn't waste, you didn't lose anything. But if you believe in Him and He doesn't exist, then you only lose like minimal time, like maybe an hour every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really why I do it, but that's just another argument, because I feel like if you're going to believe in him, you shouldn't believe in him just for the sake of, because you should, like, statistically.
Okay.
But I would rather talk about the other one.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Can I get a sense of how certain you are? So let's try to put it on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100% being absolutely certain, no doubt in my mind, 0% being I have no clue, that no certainty that this thing is the case. Where are you?
On the existence of God? I'd say fairly certain. I'd say probably like 90, 95.
Okay.
In there.
So 95%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that gives us an idea of how certain you are.
Right. There's nothing I feel like I'm completely certain on in life, just in general.
Okay.
But this is one of the stronger
Okay.
ones.
So can we talk about that first reason you gave?
Okay.
So you said the world is so complex such that it seems to necessitate God. Mm-hmm. Okay. How much does this contribute to your confidence? Like, if we can imagine your confidence being like a pie, how much of the pie does this take up? Is this like account for your 95% in total, or is just like, how much would you say? Half the pie?
I'd say it would probably be most of the pie. Probably close to, like, of that 95%, probably close to, like, I would say close to all of it, just because, we do learn about, in church we do learn about stuff like that, but there really, is no evidence. Like, whenever I think, like, do they exist, like, I usually just think of that.
Okay.
That's pretty much my core belief.
Okay. So what is it about the complexity of the world that you think necessitates God?
Okay. So it's just, I don't, there's the whole, like, evolution versus, like, creationist theory. And I just think that, just like to have, where we are today with all this technology and, how smart we are, and, like, how, humans are, like, one of the only animals that are, like, or, like, one of the few that are, like, only, aware of their own existence. And that, we have, like, existential, we can think about that stuff too. So that's why when I started taking, I'm not a philosophy major, but, I dabbled in a couple classes, but when I first started, taking those classes, like, that kind of made me think, like, it is possible we evolved like this, but I feel like it's extremely unlikely.
Okay.
But I still respect the other evolution theories.
How do we determine the likelihood of evolution? Like, what makes
correct? I really don't know how you can determine something like that. It's a pretty vague topic. Like, there's really not much, evidence behind, even how the world started. Like, that's another thing that you can argue. Like, the Big Bang Theory, I can even say, like, that doesn't even make a ton of sense. But, like, it's so long ago. Like, we really know so much. So I really can't be certain about evolution.
When you say that evolution seems unlikely to you, like, how did you get there? How did you determine that it's unlikely versus likely?
It's just, I would just say it's because of the other belief. That's kind of like the rivaling belief is, like, how humans became, so advanced. Mm-hmm. I'd say I just see it's it could very well be the case. It's just I really don't know how far evolution and nature can really bring someone, and I just feel like in a world this complex, like I said before, this complex, like, it makes more sense that there was some kind of divine intervention in there. So I just think it's less likely, because I think it's harder for humans to get to such an advanced, like, state in this society, be such a complex level without through evolution. I just think it's less likely. I don't really.
Okay. Do you think it's possible that there is a natural explanation that we just don't entirely understand?
I mean, like, with no God? Natural?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm sure. There could be. I really don't know for sure. But it seems very, very, very hard for me to believe that. But
okay. So how can we determine whether it's one or the other. Like it seems like we have two options here.
Right.
We have this complexity, that's what we have, and we have two things that might explain it. On the one hand, we have God. On the other hand, we have some natural explanation, evolution,
Right.
whatever. How do we determine?
So I mean, the way I do it, I just look at the two options, and I look at the process. The process of evolution. It takes a long time. Like it just seems like it wouldn't be as likely because the process seems a lot longer. But through the creationists, like it seems like it would make a lot more sense if it was true.
Mm-hmm. Do you think? Let's say we didn't know anything about evolution.
Okay.
Let's say we live like pre-Darwin days.
Okay.
Does not having an explanation for the complexity that we observe around us, does it lend any support towards the explanation that God did it?
I definitely think it would, especially because, during the medieval times and all that stuff, God was like a really big thing. And that was like before we had like a rivaling theory. So if people like didn't have a natural explanation of how this happened, I think that would be a lot more popular theory.
What would we require? What should we require before we accept a natural explanation?
What would we require? That's definitely tough. I mean, I think for anything like this, you really do need solid evidence. I think there definitely is more evidence that evolution just through fossils and everything, but it's just so long ago we don't have enough to really, because like evolution like explains how we became how we are, but it doesn't really explain like the complexities of the human mind as much.
If we require you said solid evidence for a natural explanation, should we also require solid evidence for a divine explanation?
Right. And you're right, we should, but I feel like we don't, personally, I feel like there's not enough of either. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just have to choose one based on my judgments and what makes the most sense to me.
Is I don't know ever the best answer?
It could be. I mean, it depends on like, what religion you are, because I mean, if you're questioning it, for some religions that can be like kind of bad. You're expected to have full belief, but personally, like people who say I don't know, like I definitely understand that because there really is not a lot of evidence out there.
Okay. So back to the criteria of solid evidence. Mm-hmm. So you said for a natural explanation, we would require solid evidence. For a divine explanation, should we also require solid evidence?
Right. Yeah. So like anything, anything with like, seeing, evidence that, God did do it. I don't know what that would look like. You do have the Bible, but like that's kind of unclear, like who even wrote that. So it's just, yes, you would need evidence for the divine too, but there's just a lack of two, as I said before. So I feel like you can't really make a decision based on evidence with this stuff.
Do you think that we currently have this standard for a divine explanation? Do we have solid evidence for a divine explanation? No,
I don't think we have really any solid evidence for any religion existing. It's mostly just belief.
So should we accept an explanation if there's no solid evidence?
That depends on the person. People who like don't believe in God or anything, I don't hold it against them because I understand if there's no evidence. Mm-hmm. You don't have to accept it. So no, like what was your question again?
Should we accept an explanation that does not come with solid evidence?
You don't have to, but you can. But like,
how certain would you say we should be of something that does not have solid evidence? Is that something that brings us to a high degree of certainty, medium, low?
Without evidence?
If something lacks this criteria of solid evidence,
okay,
is that able to bring us to a high degree of certainty?
If it lacks solid evidence, it's hard to go to a high degree of certainty. there's other heuristics, like I said before, just thinking like, if this world's so complex, then like how could it be a natural process? But that's not really evidence, that's just kind of a way of thinking about it. But without solid evidence, it's hard to go to a very high degree of certainty, I would say.
Would you say 95% is a good number for us to be at?
Without solid evidence?
Yes.
I'd say, it's kind of high. It really depends on the person. I feel like I'm higher than most people, but 95% I feel like would definitely be a lot for something that lacks evidence. But I'm just fairly sure. It makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you hold the God explanation to the same standard as you would a natural explanation?
Probably that it's true.
And like what you require in order to accept it. So for a natural explanation, you would require solid evidence.
Okay.
Are you holding the God explanation to that same exact standard?
I mean, I do. It's just, I feel like there's a lack of evidence on both sides. Like if there was solid evidence, I mean, I feel like there is evidence on the natural side, but it's not like enough to explain like the complex. It just I feel like it mostly just explains like how we became humans, but like not really like how we evolved and everything. But so I feel like you do need. I do hold them to the same degree to answer your question.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that there's a lack of evidence on both sides, so it's kind of hard for me to.
So do both of these explanations lack this criteria of having strong evidence?
Yes.
So what causes you to accept one over the other if both of them lack this key criteria?
Right. So like I said before, you kind of just have to, just look at what you know, and look at the processes, and just pick which one makes more sense to me. Like as I said before, I feel like through the natural way, it takes a long time. I feel like it doesn't make as much sense to me than the divine way.
Mm-hmm. What would bring you down from your 95% to something less? What would decrease your level of certainty?
I would say, evidence for either evolution or any type of religion in general. If there was like solid evidence that came up, it would definitely reduce my certainty.
What would cause you to change your answer to simply, I don't know?
I'd say if there was evidence coming from multiple, I would say like, let's say, there's solid evidence through evolution, and there's through Islam, and then through another Hinduism, and if there was just evidence coming ever, then I really wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, even if there was evidence through one, I wouldn't jump off. I wouldn't ditch like Christianity right away, but it definitely would bring me to the I don't know stage. Okay,
James, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. It was it's interesting. Definitely had me thinking.
Yeah. Thanks, man. That's my goal.
You just do this for fun, or?
Yeah, it's a hobby. So I have I'll give you my card. I have a YouTube channel called Street Knowledge.
Okay.
And it's a hobby known as street epistemology, and it's just something that I'm really interested in doing is talking to people about their deeply held beliefs and getting us to think critically about how we determine that these things are true.
Okay.
So
do you live around here? Or?
I do.
Okay.
Yep, I do.
It's definitely it's something most people should do. Really, you should question your core beliefs on some level and just figure out what brought you to that point.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just writing my YouTube channel here. Feel free to check it out, and my email's on the card. Street Knowledge. And you can find other videos like this. A lot of people have different channels on it, all types of videos online. Again, just if you search for street epistemology, you'll find all types of channels, stuff like that.
All right. What's your name again?
Raul.
Raul, thank you very much.
All right, man. Take it easy.